In the vibrant heart of the Marrakech Medina, an ambitious high school student inherits his grandfather's debt-ridden stall. He must choose between a quick, dishonorable sale for cash or a painstaking restoration of ancient textiles with the help of a talented apprentice. A choice that tests his family's legacy, his morality, and his budding true love. The air inside Hanout el-Atarain, the spice merchant's stall, was thick with the ghosts of forgotten scents. Saffron that had long ago turned to dust, cardamom husks brittle with age, and the faintest, lingering perfume of cedarwood. For Omar Benaissa, standing in the center of the dark, shuttered space, the aroma wasn't nostalgic. It was the heavy scent of failure. The stall, a fixture in the Marrakech Medina for 3 generations, was now his, and with it came a mountain of debt that loomed larger than the high shelves packed with dusty, unsold inventory. His grandfather, a man Omar had always viewed as a pillar of market strength, had passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving behind a legacy written in red ink. Omar, an ambitious vocational high school student focused on modern logistics, had planned to escape the labyrinthine souks for a clean, high-tech career in Casablanca. Now, the weight of the hand-carved wooden counter and the brass scales felt like a chain dragging him back. His immediate, pragmatic solution was simple, brutal, and seemingly necessary. Liquidate everything, sell off the inventory, sell the lease, pay the debt, and finally be free. He ran a hand over the smooth, cool surface of the counter, the same counter where his grandfather had taught him to count change in 3 languages. His mother, her face etched with exhaustion from working double shifts at a local riad, had given him a single, desperate instruction: just make the debt disappear. Omar, that's all that matters. The eviction notice, tacked discreetly to the inside of the door, gave him exactly 1 month. He pulled out his modern smartphone, the stark white light a jarring contrast to the aged clay walls, and began composing a message to a known antique dealer, a man rumored to be aggressive and ethically flexible, but one who offered cash immediately. Omar was ready to sacrifice history for stability. He was ready to exchange the rich, complex tapestry of his family's past for the flat, predictable security of a zero balance. As he typed the final words, immediate sale, all inventory, minimal inspection, the sound of a small, melodic cough from the doorway made him jump. Standing framed in the afternoon sun, the smoke swirling around her silhouette, was a girl he vaguely recognized from his vocational school. A serious, focused textile restoration apprentice named Samira el-Fassi. Samira el-Fassi didn't usually venture this deep into the spice merchant's quarter. Her focus was the quieter, more specialized souk of the dyers and weavers. But she'd heard the whispers, rumors, that the famed Benaissa spice hangout was closing. What drew her was not the spice, but the family's renowned, almost legendary collection of antique fabrics, pieces of woven history that her master craftsmen had often spoken of. She stepped into the stall, her eyes immediately bypassing the dusty jars and focusing on a dark curtained alcove at the back. It was there, she suspected, that the true treasure lay. She observed Omar, a boy known in school for his sharp mind and his tendency to wear expensive, Western-style shirts, furiously tapping on a phone that looked like it cost more than the store's remaining inventory. He looked stressed, and when she saw the draft of his message, a hasty, desperate plea for a quick sale, her heart sank. To sell this legacy blindly, she knew, would be an act of historical vandalism. "You can't sell them like that," she said, her voice surprisingly firm for its quiet volume. Startling Omar for a second time, she gestured toward the alcove. "The textiles. They need documentation, careful assessment. Some of those pieces might be Ottoman silk fragments, or even rare Berber wedding shawls. You'd lose 90% of their value selling them to a speculator who'll just clean them up and pass them off as museum grade." Omar frowned, annoyed by her intrusion and her dramatic language. "Value is what pays the landlord, mademoiselle," he retorted, slipping his phone into his pocket. "It's debt. I need cash, not a history lecture. And frankly, this place is about spices, not old rags." Samira stepped closer, her expression earnest and unwavering. "No, sir. This place is about history. Your grandfather wasn't just a spice merchant. He was a collector, a preserver. I'm a student of textiles. I know what I'm looking at. Let me look at them. I can tell you exactly what you have and how to sell them properly, if you give me just 1 hour." The sheer audacity of her request and the genuine passion in her eyes momentarily stalled Omar's ruthless plan. He hesitated, caught between the urgency of his financial panic and the faint, irritating voice of familial obligation. Omar grudgingly conceded the hour, more out of exhaustion than respect for Samira's passion. He pulled aside the heavy, moth-eaten curtain covering the alcove, and the air immediately changed, becoming cooler and drier, tinged with the faint, earthy smell of ancient wool and natural dyes. The room was not shelves of spices, but stacks of cedar chests and hanging bags. Samira approached the nearest chest, running her fingers lightly over the worn wood. She knelt and carefully lifted the lid, revealing dozens of folded, faded fabrics. She didn't gasp or exclaim, but her slow, respectful movement spoke volumes. Finally, she lifted a particular item, a long, heavily embroidered black wool shawl. The fringe unraveled in several places, its colors muted by time. It was the color and fineness of the remaining stitching that held her captive. "This," she whispered, "this is a hand error. But look at the complexity of the sequins. It's from the High Atlas, PI 1940. It needs months of careful work, but if done correctly, it could sell for what your grandfather paid for the whole store decades ago. It's not just a textile, Omar. It's a statement of tribal wealth, a moment of history." Omar walked over, his initial cynicism dissolving into a mild curiosity. He'd seen the shawl his whole life, an old, dusty thing his grandmother had once told him to keep away from. He reached out to touch the wool, surprised by how soft it still was, like touching a cloud of the past. "Months?" he asked, the pragmatic voice returning, slightly softer now. "I have weeks. I need money now, not historical significance." Later, Samira placed the shawl gently back into the chest. "That's the choice, isn't it? A fast sale gets you a small percentage of your debt cleared. A careful restoration gets you fulfillment. Honor your grandfather's true work, and could clear the entire debt with profit left over." She met his gaze, her dark eyes clear and challenging. "I'm a restorer. I can do the work. I need the practice, the challenge. I ask for no money up front. I only ask that you trust the process and your family's history, more than you trust a quick cash deal." Omar looked from the ancient shawl to his modern phone, from the weight of his debt to the passionate resolve of the girl before him. The price of the shawl wasn't just monetary. It was the price of his entire future philosophy. The silence in the alcove, broken only by the distant rhythmic clang of a metal worker in the souk, stretched thin between Omar and Samira. The hand error had become a silent, heavy symbol of their opposing worldviews, his rooted in immediate financial survival, as in the patient preservation of history. Omar finally exhaled, running a hand over his short, neat hair. "Okay, Samira," he said, the pragmatism in his voice struggling with a flicker of intrigue. "Let's be clear. You're offering your skills worth months of meticulous labor for free, on the promise that if we sell this collection for a good price, you get a percentage? A finder's fee? A restorer's cut?" He was trying to frame it in the business terms he understood. Samira nodded, her eyes bright with a professional intensity that impressed him. "A small percentage of the final sale price of the textiles I restore, yes. But more importantly, I get the experience and the documentation. This is a master-level project. It will be the foundation of my professional portfolio." The logic was sound, yet risky for both of them. Omar was betting his limited time on an untested apprentice, and Samira was betting her labor on a skeptical partner and a fragile market. He needed to make the debt deadline. She needed to make a professional name for herself. He held out his hand. "Deal then, but we need a tight schedule. I have 1 month, remember? We focus only on the pieces with the highest potential return. No sentimentality. And you work fast." Samira ignored his impatient timeline, but took his hand, her grasp firm. "We work correctly, Omar. Haste destroys quality, and quality dictates the final price. You need a big win, not many small losses." Their handshake felt less like a partnership and more like a truce between warring philosophies. Outside the alcove, the bell on the shop door jingled sharply, signaling the arrival of a familiar, unwelcome presence. Omar's Uncle Yasin, a man whose tailored traditional jellaba always seemed too crisp for the dusty Medina, stood framed in the sunlight, his expression a mixture of feigned sympathy and thinly veiled suspicion. Uncle Yasin was the family's established success story, a respectable partner in a modern real estate development firm in Rabat. He viewed the Benaissa spice store not as a legacy, but as a potential liability that threatened the family's newer, cleaner reputation. He peered past Omar at the shadowed alcove where Samira was already examining a stack of embroidered leather cushions. "Omar, son." Yasin's voice was smooth, carrying an undertone of practiced authority. "I'm relieved to see you've finally closed up this dusty operation. It's for the best. Old Benaissa traditions are for old men. You are modern. Omar tensed, instinctively protective of the space he had just decided to save. We haven't closed yet, Uncle. I'm assessing the inventory. I'm exploring a restructuring. Yasin laughed, a low, dismissive sound. Restructuring? In a souk store drowning in debt? Omar, be serious. I'm here to solve your problem, for your mother's sake. My firm is interested in acquiring the lease a goodwill purchase. We can close the deal tomorrow. It pays off the debt, gives you a small nest egg, and you can focus on your proper career. No dusty old textiles, no headaches, just a clean break. He produced a sleek, branded envelope. The paperwork is all here. The offer was exactly what Omar had been seeking just an hour ago. A clean, quick escape. But now, after Samira's passionate defense of the handira, the money felt tainted, the escape too easy. He looked at the envelope, then back at Samira, who had paused her inspection and was watching the exchange intently, her expression unreadable but clearly disapproving. The pressure of the deadline, the weight of his mother's expectation, and the allure of Yasin's clean money collided. He had to choose between the path of least resistance and the difficult, uncertain path of integrity and deep, painstaking labor. Omar took the envelope but did not open it. He weighed it in his hand, the material embodiment of his debt solution. I appreciate the speed, Uncle Yasin, he said, keeping his voice level. But I can't sign anything today. My grandfather left more than just spices. There's a collection of artifacts, textiles. We need a proper valuation. Yasin's smile vanished, replaced by a momentary flash of impatience. Artifacts. Rubbish. Those are old tablecloths and rags. The lease is the value here, not some flea market textiles. Don't waste time, Omar. Time is money, and your time is running out. He shot a glance towards Samira, who was now carefully documenting one of the leather cushions in her small notebook. And who is this girl? Has she been put in charge of your valuation? This is a serious financial matter, not a school project. Samira stood up, notebook in hand, and met Yasin's cold scrutiny with calm professionalism. I am Samira el-Fassi, a textile restoration apprentice, she stated clearly. I am consulting on the potential value of the Benaissa collection. I believe the estimated worth, properly restored and sold through the right channels, significantly exceeds the current debt. Her confidence seemed to momentarily silence Yasin, who was used to dealing with subservient market vendors, not sharp-witted young women. He scoffed, recovering quickly. A fantasy, child. This is the Medina, not a museum auction house. I'll give you 48 hours, Omar. Think about your mother. She needs stability, not pipe dreams. With a rustle of his expensive djellaba, Yasin turned and departed, leaving the distinct smell of expensive, modern cologne to clash with the deep, ancient aromas of the stall. Omar let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He looked at Samira. 48 hours. Now, the pressure is real. Are you absolutely certain about the potential value of this collection? Because my entire family's stability is now riding on your gut feeling about old cloth. The weight of the challenge had shifted from financial anxiety to a shared, high-stakes gamble on the power of legacy and craftsmanship. The weight of the impending deadline and Uncle Yasin's cold professionalism galvanized the unusual partnership. Samira, now officially granted access to the back alcove, worked with the focused intensity of a scholar unearthing an ancient truth. Omar, unable to focus on his logistics textbooks, found himself spending the 48 hours hovering, occasionally fetching mint tea, but mostly watching. He was captivated by her methodical process, the way she catalogued each textile, noting the weave, the dye, and the condition in a leather-bound notebook, marking the damage with tiny, meticulous paper flags. She treated the fabrics not as objects, but as historical documents. Your grandfather was meticulous, she commented without looking up, her fingers tracing a faded talisman pattern on a heavy wedding blanket. These aren't just random purchases. This is a curated collection, acquired with knowledge and intent. This realization chipped away at Omar's cynical view of his grandfather as merely a failed businessman. The old man was a secret collector. As Samira shifted a heavy, brittle pile of indigo-dyed cotton, she uncovered something Omar had never seen, a small, slim, iron-bound book, distinct from the rough market ledgers. It was a private journal, not of sales, but of acquisitions, marked with dates, locations, and cryptic prices. Omar snatched it up, the cold metal surprisingly heavy in his hand. What is this? He murmured. Samira wiped her hands on her apron and leaned closer. A clue, perhaps. A record that explains the true value of your inheritance. This is where the real Story of the Benaissa collection lies. The journal felt like the counterweight to Uncle Yasin's cash offer. A record of fulfillment that transcended mere money. Omar flipped through the journal, his high school French struggling with the archaic, flowing script. His grandfather's handwriting detailed the provenance of the textiles, who he bought them from, where, and most crucially, what he traded for them, not just what he paid. One entry, dated 15 years prior, stood out, detailing the acquisition of the prized Handira shawl Samira had admired. The note read, Handira secured from Asher's family. Payment, 500 dirhams and the promise of a signed paper from the Land Commission. The mention of Asher meant nothing to Omar, but the signed paper sent a sudden, icy shock through him. His family owned a seemingly worthless, dusty plot of land outside Marrakech, a plot that his Uncle Yasin was currently trying to acquire for his firm's new development project. Could the two be connected? Just as he was absorbing this possibility, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from Uncle Yasin. The 48 hours are up. Time for the final decision. I am coming to the stall in 1 hour. Have the lease transfer ready. The pressure was suffocating. Omar realized the gravity of his choice. If he signed the lease over, accepting the money, and eliminating the debt, he would be betraying his grandfather's hidden life's work, and potentially handing Yasin an undervalued asset. If he refused, banking on Samira's restoration skills, he risked his family's security on a 6-month-long gamble. He looked at Samira, her face dusted with faint indigo powder, already prepping the Handira for its first wash. We need to work through this ledger right now, he stated, his voice tight. My uncle is coming, and I need to know exactly what he's trying to buy. And what my grandfather really owned. With the clock ticking, Samira temporarily abandoned the textiles for the dense calligraphy of the ledger. Her sharp, analytical mind, usually focused on the physics of dye pigments, proved adept at decoding his grandfather's cryptic financial shorthand. Together, they pieced together a pattern. Many of the most valuable, older pieces in the collection had been acquired not with cash, but in exchange for favors, old debts cleared, or small promises. The Hanout had been a community hub, a silent bank of goodwill, not just a retail shop. They found another crucial entry detailing the acquisition of the most historically significant item, a rare Tamazight carpet woven with PI Islamic symbols, secured carpet from Benali family. Exchange, clearing their son's medical debts and one signature needed for the water rights application. The realization hit Omar with the force of a physical blow. His grandfather hadn't amassed debt through failure. He had accumulated social capital and priceless artifacts by acting as a shadow financier and philanthropist. His debt was a complex ledger of kindness that had gone unpaid by the community after his passing, forcing his family into a financial crisis. Uncle Yasin, with his modern real estate approach, saw only the lease and the location, completely overlooking the immense cultural and community value locked in the alcove. Samira gently touched Omar's arm, her eyes full of empathy for the boy who had just learned his family's supposed failure was actually a secret form of success and fulfillment. Omar, this collection isn't just valuable. It's a testament to your grandfather's true character. He chose people over profit. That's the legacy you have to protect. As the familiar, expensive sedan pulled up outside the stall, casting a dark shadow across the brightly colored sacks of unsold saffron, Omar closed the ledger, his mind finally clear. He knew he could not take Yasin's money. Uncle Yasin stepped into the stall, his confidence radiating off him like heat from the midday sun. He looked pointedly at the sealed envelope still resting near the counter. I see the papers are untouched. Good, saves time, he said, moving to the counter, prepared to sign the lease transfer himself. Omar, standing next to Samira, who was quietly observing, felt a sudden, profound strength. The strength that came from having a secret truth a powerful man before him didn't possess. I won't be signing the lease, Uncle, Omar said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Yasin stopped mid-reach for a pen and stared at Omar. What was that? Don't be foolish, boy. This is your chance. I'm offering you financial stability and a clean exit. The debt is astronomical. Where will you get the money? Omar leaned against the counter. I will get the money from the Benaissa collection. Uncle, my grandfather's textile archive is worth far more than the debt, and far more than your lease offer. Yasin's face darkened, his composure cracking. The rags? Don't insult my intelligence. Omar, you have been manipulated by this apprentice and her fantasies. I am raising the offer. Double the amount. Take it, pay the debt, and walk away happy. The double offer was a massive sum. enough to buy not only his mother's relief, but also his own secure future. For a moment, the allure of the money was almost blinding. Samira didn't interrupt, but her gaze was a silent reminder of the ledger's contents, of the integrity and sacrifice that had created the collection. Omar shook his head, pushing past the temptation. "It's not for sale, uncle, neither is the store, nor the fulfillment my grandfather found in this work. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises, or I'll inform the Medina Council that you've been aggressively pursuing my family for an undervalued asset." He had finally chosen legacy over liquidity, finding an unexpected source of courage and family pride in the face of immense pressure. Uncle Yasin's departure was not a retreat. It was a tactical withdrawal. He didn't erupt in a loud marketplace confrontation. Instead, he left with a chillingly calm threat. "You've made a terrible mistake, Omar. You chose old cloth over your mother's comfort. You will regret this when the deadline passes." The threat hung in the air long after the roar of his sedan faded. Omar felt a rush of adrenaline, quickly followed by a heavy wash of fear. He had found his courage, but he hadn't yet found the money. Samira, sensing his panic, gently pulled out the handier again. "He's trying to scare you into making a mistake, Omar. Let's focus on the facts." The textiles are all facts. She had already begun the process of preliminary cleaning, using a soft, specialized brush to remove decades of settled dust. As she worked, she explained her plan. They would choose 10 pieces of the most historically significant and potentially valuable, and focus solely on their restoration. They needed to create a small, stunning portfolio of completed work, not just promises. This portfolio would be used to secure a meeting with the only person in Marrakech with the integrity and the resources to help them. Madame Zora, the reclusive, legendary owner of the Musée Ancients Museum of Ancient Textiles, a woman known for her uncompromising passion for Moroccan history and her deep pockets. It was a long shot, but it was their only lifeline against the looming eviction notice. The next morning, the Benaissa hangout was transformed. The front area, previously dedicated to stale spices, became a makeshift workshop. Omar, swapping his clean school clothes for a practical, stained apron, helped Samira construct a temporary, shaded work surface using old wooden crates. His high school knowledge of logistics unexpectedly proved useful, as he optimized the workspace for light, ventilation, and the careful storage of chemicals. He was surprised to find a quiet satisfaction in the physical work, a sense of fulfillment far removed from the abstract calculations of his business studies. Their working rhythm quickly established itself. Samira was the artist and historian, meticulous and unwavering in her commitment to authenticity. Omar was the project manager and pragmatist, tracking time, securing specialized supplies, which required borrowing money from his surprised but supportive mother, and researching the market value of comparable textiles. Their shared endeavor naturally brought them into close proximity, and the serious, focused energy in the shop was laced with a quiet, mutual respect. He learned that Samira wasn't just a talented student. She was supporting her younger siblings after her father's passing, and understood the weight of financial responsibility just as well as he did. They were two ambitious souls, bound by a shared, desperate gamble and the silent, guiding hand of his grandfather's legacy. It was in this shared, meaningful struggle that their budding true love found its roots. The most pressing challenge was the hand era. Samira believed its true value was masked by a pervasive, decades-old grease stain, a dark patch near the center. Removing it was risky. Aggressive cleaning could destroy the delicate silk embroidery beneath. She sourced a specialized, non-acidic solvent, a clear liquid that cost a staggering fraction of Omar's remaining cash reserve. The atmosphere in the store was tense as they prepared for the critical application. As Samira began the delicate process, applying the solvent drop by drop with a pipette, Omar watched, holding his breath. He saw the stain start to lift, but also noticed a subtle blurring of the black wool's original dye around the edges. Fear flashed in Samira's eyes. "It's reacting too quickly," she whispered, her hands shaking slightly. Omar immediately grabbed a prepared basin of distilled water and an absorbent cloth. "We have to neutralize it now," he instructed, his voice ringing with sudden, clear authority. Together, they worked in a frantic, coordinated dance, flushing the area and patting it dry. The stain was partially lifted, but the dye was saved. They stared at the textile, exhausted. They had saved the hand era, but the incident was a stark reminder of the fragile nature of their investment. "One wrong move and the debt is back," Omar said, his voice raw. Samira looked up, her relief mixed with determination. Then we make no wrong moves. We proceed slower, smarter. We take a break. We need tea. The strange new activity at the Benaissa store did not go unnoticed. The Medina is a dense web of information, and within days, the rumor had spread. The grandson refused a generous offer from Yasin, the developer, choosing instead to play with old rags. The neighboring merchants, who respected the memory of Omar's grandfather, were divided. Some admired his bravery. Others saw him as a fool doomed to fail. The most potent whisper came from Malik, the aggressive antique dealer. Omar had almost messaged the very man Yasin had likely intended to use to quickly flip the textiles. Malik visited the store, his eyes predatory, trying to intimidate Omar. I hear you turned down the big money, Tid. That was stupid. I'll give you half of Yasin's offer right now. Cash for the whole lot. No questions asked. I'll even take the debt. Omar, fortified by Samira's recent history lesson on his grandfather's integrity, stood firm. The collection is not for sale to speculators, Malik. I am not selling history. I am selling restoration. Malik sneered, focusing his dark gaze on Samira. You're getting sweet-talked by this restorer. She's going to spend 6 months playing with water, and you lose everything. His words were a direct assault on the feasibility of their long-term plan. He was right. They needed a short-term win to prove their concept. As he watched Malik disappear into the crowd, Omar realized they needed to accelerate their plan. They couldn't wait months for Madame Zohar. They needed to find a way to get 1 or 2 fully restored, documented pieces to market now, not only for a down payment, but also to demonstrate the genuine potential of the collection. But the skeptical Medina, focusing on the immediate need for a quick, impactful win. Samira diverted her attention from the complex hand era to the beautifully embroidered leather cushion she had first documented. It was significantly smaller and less complex, making it a viable, fast-track project. The cushion, which featured deep, rich shades of saffron and indigo, required mostly surface cleaning and stabilization of the old stitching. Over the course of 3 focused, intense days, they worked side by side, their heads bent over the delicate work. Omar handled the research and documentation, creating a digital file detailing the cushion's estimated age, regional style, and Samira's restoration process, a professional presentation that felt more like a startup pitch than an antique sale. Samira completed the final stabilizing stitches with practiced care. When it was finished, the change was startling. The cushion, once dull and faded, now glowed with the original, vibrant colors of the ancient dyes. It was a small masterpiece. They took professional photographs in the best light. Looking at the finished piece, Omar felt a surge of pride, a deeper, more satisfying feeling than any good grade he'd ever received. It's perfect, Samira. It's worth triple what it was last week, he said, the numbers finally clicking into place. She smiled, a rare, genuine expression of happiness that completely transformed her serious face. Now, Omar, she said, her voice full of anticipation, who buys a single restored antique cushion for an absurd price? We need a buyer who appreciates the fulfillment of craftsmanship, not just the money. Omar needed to sell the cushion quickly and for a premium. He rejected the usual dealers who would only offer a fraction of the value. Instead, he relied on his high school network. He contacted Amin, a friend from his vocational class whose family owned a successful, high-end riad known for its blend of modern luxury and traditional Moroccan aesthetics. Amin's mother, Lala Aker, was the principal decorator and a connoisseur of authentic regional art. Omar arranged a private viewing at the riad. Lala Aker, a woman of impeccable taste and shrewd business sense, examined the cushion closely, not with the cold calculation of a dealer, but with the appreciation of an artist. She spent 20 minutes discussing the stitch patterns and the dye sources with Samira, completely ignoring Omar. Finally, she turned to him. The quality of the restoration, Binti, she said, nodding at Samira, is exceptional. This is what brings the value. It's not a dusty relic. It's a preserved piece of art, Lala. Aker made an offer exactly the high-end price Omar and Samira had targeted. The money was enough to pay the first of their major debts and buy them an extra month of breathing room. More importantly, she gave Samira her card. You have talent. I need more pieces like this for the Riyadh's private collection. Bring me your next best pieces when they are ready. Omar and Samira walked out of the Riyadh into the bustling square, a feeling of dizzying, shared triumph washing over them. They had a strategy, a client, and proof that their approach worked. The victory wasn't just financial. It was a profound, shared fulfillment that solidified their professional and personal bond. With the cushion sold and the first major creditor paid off, the atmosphere back at the Benaissa hangout changed from desperate panic to cautious optimism. Omar's mother, initially skeptical and worried by Yasin's threats, looked at the remaining cash and the official receipt for the paid debt and finally allowed a fragile smile to reach her eyes. The immediate threat of eviction had receded, replaced by the possibility of stability. Omar celebrated the small victory by taking Samira to a quiet, rooftop terrace overlooking the Medina, away from the dust and the pressure of the store. Under the darkening Moroccan sky, with the sound of the evening call to prayer echoing across the rooftops, they finally relaxed. Their conversation drifted away from the threat counts and market prices to their own dreams. Omar confessed his true ambition was not just logistics, but using his skills to modernize and simplify systems that now felt perfectly aligned with organizing and documenting his grandfather's collection. Samira spoke of her dream to one day open a cooperative restoration studio to train other young women. They realized their relationship was built not on casual attraction, but on a deep, shared respect for hard work, integrity, and the pursuit of meaningful fulfillment. Omar reached across the table and took her hand, a simple, honest gesture of affection that felt like a quiet promise of true love. The news of the cushion sale and the subsequent payment of the debt spread like wildfire. Omar was now viewed with a mixture of respect and increased scrutiny. The relief was short-lived, however, as the good news provoked an angry response from the one person they couldn't afford to ignore, Uncle Yasin. Yasin stormed into the store, not with a checkbook this time, but with cold, calculated rage. "So, you sold a cushion for the price of a small car," he spat. "A lucky shot, a Riyadh owner's momentary foolishness, but you still haven't cleared the lease debt. That still falls due. And now, I'm cutting off your family's only other source of income." Yasin revealed that, through his contacts at the real estate firm, he had exerted pressure on the Riyadh where Omar's mother worked, resulting in her being immediately laid off. "Your defiance has consequences. Omar, you choose rags over your family's happiness? Then let's see how you enjoy absolute poverty." Omar was stunned into silence. The air punched from his lungs. The cushion money, which was supposed to be a triumph, now had to cover not just the debt, but his entire family's living expenses. Samira stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Omar's arm, her gaze defiant. "This changes nothing, Mr. Yasin. It only proves you are desperate to stop us. Now leave, or we call the Medina Council." Yasin laughed bitterly, the sound grating. "The clock is ticking faster now, little fool, much faster." Yasin's ruthless move plunged Omar's family back into immediate crisis. The cushion money, initially a lifeline for the store, was now the only thing standing between his mother and destitution. The emotional toll on Omar was immense. He felt directly responsible for his mother's layoff. His focus shifted from the careful restoration work to the desperate need for more money faster. Samira recognized the danger immediately. Omar's panic was threatening to make him reckless. "We cannot rush the restoration, Omar. Quality is our only leverage. If we compromise the art for speed, we fail completely." But Omar was frantic. He started suggesting shortcuts, using stronger chemical agents, selling pieces unrestored, or even accepting Malik's lowball offer for a quick, large sum. Their harmonious partnership began to fray under the relentless financial pressure. Samira took Omar back to the private ledger. "Look at this," she insisted, pointing to the entry about the valuable Tamazight carpet. "It says your grandfather took on a huge medical debt for the Benaissa family in exchange for this. He traded money for trust and fulfillment. If we sell this restored carpet now, and sell it honestly, we will get enough to cover your mother's loss and secure our timeline. But we have to do it right. Let the carpet become your family's security." The Tamazight carpet, a large, tightly woven piece covered in years of accumulated grit, now became the focal point of their survival plan. It was significantly larger and more damaged than the Handira, representing a monumental challenge for Samira. It wasn't just dirt. The edges were unraveling, and some of the ancient, symbolic geometric patterns were faded beyond recognition. To work on it, they had to completely rearrange the store, laying the massive carpet out in the center under careful, filtered light. The sheer size and complexity of the task overwhelmed Omar. He looked at the mountain of work, the looming deadline, and his mother's worried face, and felt a profound sense of helplessness. Samira, however, saw only the challenge. She meticulously stabilized the unraveling borders and began the slow, delicate process of cleaning. As she worked, she pointed out the unique symbols woven into the fabric, symbols of protection, fertility, and community. She explained that the true value of the carpet lay not just in its age, but in the story and the culture it preserved. Omar, watching her patient dedication, felt his panic subside, replaced by a quiet awe for her skill. He realized the money would come, but the fulfillment was in the process itself, in the honor of preserving his grandfather's secret acts of kindness. Their mutual dedication to the carpet slowly, stitch by stitch, began to reweave their fractured sense of happiness and shared purpose. Working on the massive Tamazight carpet became the center of Omar and Samira's existence. The size of it demanded they work closely, often kneeling opposite each other, their hands sometimes brushing as they handled the delicate weave. Omar, learning the basic stabilization techniques, discovered a new layer to his grandfather's ledger. While attempting to repair a section where the wall was brittle, Samira uncovered a section of the weave where a small, repeated geometric pattern had been intentionally obscured by overstitching. Using fine tweezers, she carefully removed the later threads. Beneath, a unique symbol was revealed, a stylized, six-pointed star, unfamiliar even to Samira's historical knowledge. Omar immediately referenced his grandfather's ledger, flipping to the entry concerning the carpet and the Benaissa family. Scrawled in the margin next to the acquisition details was a drawing of the exact same six-pointed star and a single, cryptic word, almond, water. Omar whispered, translating the Berber word. Why would he weave the word for water into a carpet he traded for a medical debt? Samira looked up, her expression thoughtful. This isn't just a sign of the Benaissa family. It's a signature of a secret. Your grandfather wasn't just a merchant. He was involved in deep community issues, possibly related to land and water rights, which is far more complex than a simple debt. The realization added a thrilling, conspiratorial layer to their work, suggesting the carpet was not just art, but a piece of an untold family history. A legacy of social justice that far outvalued the immediate money. Driven by the cryptic symbol, Omar knew he had to find the Benaissa family. Using the vocational school's resources and some discreet inquiries among the older Medina merchants, he eventually traced the family to a small village on the outskirts of Marrakech. Near the land Yasin was trying to develop, the Benaissas were wary of strangers, especially those asking about old debts. But the mention of the Tamazight carpet and the symbol of Amen opened the door. He and Samira traveled there, leaving the stall temporarily in his mother's care. They were greeted by Khalid Benaissa, a man in his 50s whose tired eyes held a deep sadness. Khalid confirmed the trade his father had given Omar's grandfather the priceless carpet to clear crippling medical bills. But Khalid also revealed the darker side of the deal. The signed paper for the water rights application, mentioned in the ledger's other entry, wasn't a standard document. It was a local agreement guaranteeing the Benaissa family, and several others in the village, access to a crucial irrigation channel that ran through the land Yasin was now trying to acquire. Your grandfather promised to protect our water access, to ensure our happiness, Khalid told Omar. That's why he bought the carpet, to silence the family who might have sold the land without that protection. Omar was shocked.
His grandfather hadn't just been kind, he had been a secret, strategic protector of the community. He realized the money Yasin offered him was tied to the erasure of this promise, and the suffering of the Benaissa community. Omar returned to the Medina with a renewed sense of purpose, but also a crushing burden. He had to save his family from debt and protect an entire community's water supply, all while facing a ruthless adversary. The Tamazight carpet was no longer just a financial asset, it was a physical reminder of his moral obligation. However, Yasin moved faster than expected. The next day, a formal legal summons arrived at the stall. Yasin, leveraging his knowledge of the law and his professional connections, was suing Omar for the outstanding lease payment, arguing that Omar had deliberately misrepresented his ability to repay the debt by relying on, unproven, illiquid assets, the textiles. The summons also contained a clause demanding an immediate inventory and temporary seizure of all Benaissa assets, including the stall and its contents, as collateral. This was Yasin's final, devastating move, to use the law to freeze their only source of money and time. Omar's mother dissolved into tears. I told you, Omar. You should have taken the money. In his moment of near despair, Samira calmly read the document. He can't seize my tools or my work product, she said. We have to finish this carpet and move it to a safe location now. We need to secure the assets, then use the evidence of your grandfather's integrity, the carpet's history, to fight him legally. The legal threat became a literal ticking clock. They had 48 hours until the court-appointed officer was scheduled to arrive. The massive Tamazight carpet, only 70% restored, had to be completed and moved. Sleep became a luxury they couldn't afford. Omar, fueled by fear and a deepening desire to honor his grandfather, worked through the night, his hands now surprisingly steady as he performed the tedious but crucial stabilization of the edges. Samira was a machine of focused energy, expertly blending natural dyes to fill in the faded sections of the border, bringing the symbolic Tamazight patterns back to life.
Their exhaustion blurred the lines of their professional roles. Omar found himself massaging the tension from Samira's neck, and she, in turn, fed him bites of calling Massimin when he was too tired to stop working. Their shared, desperate struggle cemented their relationship. It was a bond forged in the heat of a crisis, realizing that true love was not just romance, but relentless, unified effort toward a common, honorable goal. As the sun rose on the second day, casting a warm, golden light across the now vibrant, completed carpet, they collapsed onto the surrounding rugs, spent but victorious. The carpet was done. It was stunning, a perfect, powerful blend of history, culture, and Samira's impeccable skill, worth at least double their original high estimate. The urgency was now paramount. They couldn't risk the carpet being seized. Samira had the solution. Madame Zora's Museum of Ancient Textiles, the reclusive owner, famous for her uncompromising ethics, often allowed rare textiles to be temporarily stored in her climate-controlled archives for documentation purposes. It was a long shot, but their only safe haven. Using the contact from Lala Acre, the Riyadh owner, Omar secured a last-minute appointment. They wrapped the enormous carpet carefully, disguising it as a bulky delivery. As they drove the carpet across Marrakech, Omar felt an almost physical severing from the store. They had entrusted the last shred of their financial stability to a stranger. Madame Zora, a formidable woman with eyes that missed nothing, listened patiently as Omar recounted the legal threats, the family history, and the discovery of the almond symbol. Samira then presented the carpet, detailing the restoration. Zora didn't offer a price. Instead, she focused on the integrity of the piece, the symbolism of almond. Zora finally stated, tells a story of community protection. This is not just a textile, young man. It is proof of your grandfather's fulfillment, his true value. You must not sell this yet. You must use its history to fight your uncle. She agreed to safeguard the carpet, providing them not with money, but with something far more valuable, a secure location and access, and to her vast network of legal historical experts, to prepare their defense against Yasin. The store was collateral. The carpet was their weapon. Madame Zora was a woman of action. She immediately connected Omar and Samira with her museum's pro bono legal counsel, Meta Fikri, a sharp, seasoned lawyer with a deep understanding of Moroccan property and cultural heritage laws. Fikri listened to Omar's account of the ledger, the almond symbol, the Benali family's water rights issue, and Uncle Yasin's aggressive tactics. The lawyer's face hardened. Mr. Yasin is operating on the assumption that this stall is only a commercial property. We will prove it is a cultural archive, Fikri announced. The Tamazight carpet, stored securely here, is our key evidence. We will file an emergency motion, arguing that seizing the stall, which contains a priceless, historically continuous collection, constitutes a loss of national cultural heritage. More importantly, we will argue that Yasin is attempting to acquire land by circumventing his grandfather's community promises, the water rights, essentially using the lease debt as a leverage point for a much larger, unethical land grab. Omar realized that Fikri wasn't just defending his debt. He was weaving a legal tapestry that defined Omar's grandfather not as a debtor, but as a local hero. This legal strategy offered Omar a new pathway to fulfillment, not just repaying the debt, but preserving his family's honor and the community's resources. While Fikri prepared the court filings, Uncle Yasin, anticipating Omar's community defense, moved to neutralize the Benali family. Yasin traveled to the village, armed with legal documents and vague threats of litigation, offered Khalid Benali a substantial cash settlement to officially deny any connection between the carpet, Omar's grandfather, and the water rights promise. It was a tempting sum, enough to buy the Benalis out of their generational poverty. Khalid Benali, torn between his family's needs and the honor of his father's agreement with Omar's grandfather, reached out to Omar. Omar and Samira drove back to the village immediately. Khalid showed Omar the official-looking settlement papers, his hands trembling. I don't want to betray your grandfather, Omar. But Yasin says the promise is worthless. And this money can secure my children's future, Samira spoke gently but firmly, appealing to their shared heritage. That carpet is a promise, Khalid. The almond symbol is proof of a bond stronger than Yasin's paper. If you accept his money, you lose your water rights forever. That money will be gone in a year. But the water is your children's happiness for generations, Omar, looking at the village's dry, cracked earth, made a solemn pledge. I will not only stop Yasin from seizing the land, but I will also ensure your legal right to that water is restored. Give me time. Trust my grandfather's legacy. Omar's countersuit successfully halted the seizure of the stall, forcing an immediate hearing before the Marrakech Medina Council, a powerful body of elders and legal mind, who govern disputes within the ancient city walls. This was a critical test of character and truth, not just law. Uncle Yasin arrived in full professional armor, flanked by his own lawyers, presenting himself as the victim of a student's baseless defiance. Omar, accompanied by the formidable Mater Fikri, and with Samira sitting beside him as his textile expert, presented a defense rooted in history and ethics. Fikri argued that the Benaissa collection was a cultural trust, and that Yasin's aggressive pursuit of the lease was merely a cover for a larger, self-serving property development that would harm the community. When Omar took the floor, he didn't focus on the money. Instead, he spoke about his grandfather's ledger, describing it as a testament to integrity and fulfillment. He then presented the photographic evidence of the Tamazight carpet and the almond symbol, supported by Samira's expert documentation, connecting the stall's lease directly to the Benaissa's water rights. The council members, deeply respectful of tradition and community honor, listened with growing interest. The cultural and moral dimensions of the case had clearly shifted, the balance against Yasin's purely commercial argument. The climax of the council hearing came when Samira presented her detailed findings on the Tamazight carpet, using projected images. She demonstrated how the almond symbols, the six-pointed star representing the joining of two triangles, a traditional representation of water and land, was woven into the fabric. She explained that in the context of the region's ancient weaving traditions, such a symbol, placed within a debt-clearing transaction, indicated a much deeper contractual obligation. This carpet, Samira concluded, her voice ringing clear, is not just an object of financial value. It is a documented, woven contract. It proves that Omar's grandfather's debt was offset by his commitment to the Benaissa family's water access. For Uncle Yasin to seize this stall to facilitate the erasure of that promise is not just to betray a family legacy, but a sacred community agreement. Yasin's lawyer scrambled, arguing that a textile could not possibly hold legal weight. But the council, steeped in tradition where honor and woven promises held sway, was visibly moved. The evidence of the carpet turned the legal dispute into a moral imperative. Omar watched Samira, a wave of profound love and admiration washing over him. She was saving not just his stall, but the very soul of his family's honor. After a tense deliberation, the Medina Council delivered its verdict. They ruled against Uncle Yasin's immediate seizure request. The council acknowledged the commercial debt, but stated particularly that the Benaissa collection, when properly realized, significantly exceeded the current debt. Crucially, the council issued a temporary injunction. Omar was granted 6 months to complete the restoration and sale of the most valuable pieces. Furthermore, due to the evidence concerning the almond symbol, the council imposed a legal stay on all development plans for the disputed land outside Marrakech, until the water rights issue could be independently verified and permanently resolved. Yasin was defeated, his aggressive commercial tactics rendered useless by the commitment to cultural integrity and community fulfillment. Omar had won time and honor, but he still had a monumental debt to repay. As they walked out into the Medina, Samira squeezed his hand. 6 months, Omar. We have our fulfillment. Now we have to make the money. Their victory was incomplete, but it was a victory nonetheless, a testament to the power of shared purpose and true love. With the legal battle temporarily halted, Omar and Samira converted the Benaissa stall into a proper, small restoration studio. The change was more than aesthetic. It was a psychological transformation from a struggling shop into a purposeful workshop. Omar, using his project management skills, implemented a rigorous schedule. They partitioned the space with hanging cloths, creating a dust-free environment for restoration, and a small, secure consultation area. Their first priority was to select and prepare the remaining 9 high-value textiles to complete the portfolio promised to Madame Zora's network. Samira trained Omar in the basic, crucial elements of archival storage and handling, ensuring every piece was treated with reverence. They worked on a massive, intricately embroidered purple wedding curtain and a rare collection of hand-dyed silk scarves. The work was slow, detailed, and often frustrating, but the pressure of the 6-month deadline and Uncle Yasin's looming threat kept them focused. Omar, once obsessed with quick, abstract financial wins, now found fulfillment in the tactile reality of preservation, realizing that the value wasn't in the cloth itself, but the meticulous effort required to save its history. Samira's exceptional skill, combined with the dramatic story of the Benaissa collection's legal battle, began to attract attention. Madame Zohra, pleased with the quality of the restored Tamazight carpet, began subtly directing high-profile collectors and cultural journalists toward the Benaissa stall. Samira, initially shy, had to quickly adapt to presenting her work. One day, a respected cultural journalist from Casablanca, Mme Hanain, visited the stall. She wasn't interested in the debt. She was fascinated by the story of a young high school apprentice saving a generational cultural legacy. Mme Hanain interviewed Samira extensively, focusing on her restoration techniques and her passion for sustainable preservation. Omar, observing the interview, realized Samira was their genuine assets. Her integrity and talent were more powerful marketing tools than any aggressive sales pitch. The subsequent article, published in a major national newspaper, titled "The Apprentice Who Saved a Souk Legacy," transformed Samira's professional standing and placed an international spotlight on the Benaissa stall, making any further attempts by Yasin to simply seize the old rags politically toxic. The publicity quickly bore fruit. A wealthy collector from France, who specialized in North African decorative arts and had seen the article and heard Zohra's praise, contacted Omar. He wasn't interested in buying an antique. He was interested in commissioning Samira to restore a small, delicate collection of his own faded tapestries. This commission was a pivotal moment. It provided them with their first substantial, guaranteed income that was entirely separate from the volatile sale of the Benaissa collection. It gave them much-needed money for supplies and to cover their mother's living expenses, easing Omar's anxiety. More importantly, it validated their business model. The real money was in Samira's high-value, specialized service, not just the inventory. Omar negotiated the contract meticulously, applying the logistics and business principles from his schoolwork to the real world. He ensured a fair fee for Samira's time, protected their intellectual property, and established a clear deadline. Celebrating the contract, Omar and Samira shared a look of shared happiness and accomplishment. This commission proved they could build a sustainable, ethical business based on fulfillment and craftsmanship. While the commission provided financial relief, the workload became immense. Samira was now balancing the restoration of the Benaissa collection, their long-term debt solution with the higher pressure, paying commission work. She often worked late into the night, her concentration unwavering, but her exhaustion mounting. Omar worried about her well-being. Noticing the dark circles under her eyes and the occasional tremor in her hands, their relationship, previously a source of comfort and strength, began to show signs of strain. Omar, still operating with a high-stakes, entrepreneurial mindset, constantly pushed for faster completion times. Samira, fiercely committed to the highest ethical standards of restoration, bristled at any suggestion of rushing. "I will not compromise the integrity of this history for your arbitrary deadline, Omar," she asserted one evening, placing a delicate tool down with a clang. "My fulfillment comes from doing the work right," Omar countered, "and my family's stability comes from the money we get when the work is done. We're running out of time." The argument revealed the core tension between them. His fear of financial ruin versus her devotion to professional purity. They had to learn to align their priorities without sacrificing either their love or their principles. After a tense, sleepless night, Omar recognized his error. He was allowing his fear of his uncle and the debt to overshadow the genuine triumph of their work and the well-being of the person he loved. He apologized to Samira, acknowledging that she was the foundation of their success and that her integrity was non-negotiable. "You're right," he admitted, sitting beside her on the work floor, gently massaging her tired hands. "My logistics brain got stuck on the schedule. We need to focus on what you need, not what the debt demands." He proposed a radical solution. He would temporarily withdraw from his own high school studies to dedicate himself fully to managing the business and logistics side, freeing Samira to focus solely on the restoration. He would handle all client communication, sourcing, financial tracking, and security, Samira was touched by his sacrifice and his commitment. "We are partners, Omar," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We need both the hands and the brain." They agreed on a revised, sustainable schedule, prioritizing quality above all. The crisis had passed, replaced by a deeper understanding of their complementary strengths, and a renewed commitment to their true love, forged in compromise and mutual respect. With Omar now fully managing the business and logistics, their efficiency soared. He formalized the tracking of the restoration process, creating detailed digital files for each textile that documented Samira's work and the historical provenance from the ledger. This digital catalogue was their long-term insurance against Yasin. One afternoon, a young man, looking distinctly out of place in the Medina, arrived at the store carrying a large, sealed box. He introduced himself as a junior associate from Uncle Yasin's real estate firm. The box contained a complete, meticulously organized set of blueprints, land surveys, and development permits for the land outside Marrakech, the very land connected to the Benali family's water rights. A note was scrawled on the top document: "I need to borrow your logistics brain, nephew. My team is failing me. Review these plans. Tell me where we are vulnerable. I will pay you for the consultation, but keep it between us." Omar was immediately suspicious. This was a classic trap. Yasin wasn't asking for help. He was offering a bribe disguised as a job, hoping to co-opt Omar's expertise and compromise his integrity. The money offered was significant, enough to completely erase the last of the inherited debt. The temptation of a final, clean break was powerful, but Omar realized Yasin's true vulnerability wasn't in the blueprints. It was in the legal and ethical weakness of the water rights issue. The bribe was a desperate attempt to buy Omar's silence and expertise. Omar shared the blueprints and the note with Samira. She immediately saw the ethical dilemma. "He's testing your integrity, Omar. He wants you to value his money over the happiness of the Benalis." Omar, however, saw an opportunity. He realized Yasin's request for vulnerability analysis was genuine. Yasin was under pressure to secure the land quickly. Omar decided to accept the consultation, but turn it into a legal trap. Instead of analyzing the plans for construction flaws, Omar meticulously reviewed every detail for contradictions regarding the water supply. He discovered a crucial omission. The plans explicitly referenced a modern well system that was not yet operational, while completely failing to mention the historic, active irrigation channel that serviced the Benali community, the very channel Omar's grandfather had protected. This omission was deliberate fraud. Omar spent 2 days compiling a detailed report, not for Yasin, but for Meta Fikri. His report focused entirely on the fraudulent representation of water access, directly linking the land's commercial viability to the water rights promised by his grandfather. He realized his true fulfillment wasn't in building new projects, but in exposing injustice using his logistical skills. Omar packaged his vulnerability report, a thick binder of legal and survey analysis, and had it delivered back to Uncle Yasin with a formal invoice for his consultation fee. He did not accept the money. He simply documented the work. The report contained no advice on architecture or engineering. It consisted of a single, devastating conclusion: vulnerability assessment summary. Your proposed development is financially and legally unviable. The submitted plans omit the existing, legally enforceable community water rights tied to the ancestral irrigation channel, which constitutes material fraud under the current council injunction. The vulnerability is not in the design. It is in the integrity of the acquisition. The following day, Meta Fikri, armed with Omar's detailed report and the supporting evidence from the ledger and the Tamazight Carpet, filed a formal complaint with the Medina Council. Fikri argued that Yasin had acted in bad faith, attempting to use Omar to commit legal fraud and circumvent the council's injunction regarding the water rights. The council, furious at this display of modern corporate arrogance and disregard for tradition, summoned Yasin for an emergency session. Omar had successfully used his own money-oriented skills not for self-enrichment, but for justice and community protection, finding a profound new sense of purpose. The emergency council hearing was quick and brutal, faced with Omar's meticulously documented evidence. Yasin himself had unwittingly paid for the case against the uncle collapse. The council found Uncle Yasin in contempt for his attempts to circumvent the water rights injunction and his fraudulent plans to punish his disrespect for the Medina's traditions and his aggression toward his own family and the Benali community. The council issued 2 severe rulings. First, Yasin's development firm was given a massive ban, and seizure from acquiring any land within a 30-kilometer radius of Marrakech for 5 years. This effectively crushed his project and significantly damaged his firm's reputation. Second, and most importantly for Omar, the council ruled that Uncle Yasin was solely responsible for the Benaissa store's debt and ordered him to clear the entire outstanding lease payment and his mother's last wages immediately as reparations for his harassment. Omar was stunned. The store was saved, his mother was compensated, and the debt, the source of all his anxiety, was gone. Secured not by the sale of textiles, but by justice. He and Samira exchanged a triumphant, tearful glance. They had achieved financial stability and fulfillment in a single, honorable move. The next morning, the bank confirmed the full transfer of funds from Uncle Yasin's firm. The Benaissa family was officially debt-free, and Omar's mother had received substantial compensation. The immense, crushing weight of financial anxiety lifted, replaced by a giddy sense of freedom. Omar immediately contacted his mother, who wept with relief, finally granting him her unqualified support and her blessing for his partnership with Samira. However, the unexpected financial freedom created a strange temporary vacuum. The desperate need for money, the very engine that had driven their frantic work for months, was gone. Omar looked at the stacks of priceless, partially restored textiles. "We did it, Samira," he said, pulling her into a joyous embrace. "The debt is gone. The store is safe. Now, what do we do with all this?" The original goal was simply survival. Now, their purpose shifted. Samira smiled, pointing to the delicate, uncleaned wedding curtain. "We finish what we started, Omar. We don't sell this history out of desperation. We sell it to honor your grandfather and to fund our future. We turn this restored collection into the capital for our cooperative restoration studio. We work now for fulfillment and legacy, not fear." The fight for money had ended. The work for true love and a shared, honorable future had just begun. With the store financially secure, Omar and Samira's focus shifted entirely to the long-term vision, establishing their cooperative restoration studio. They formalized their business plan, naming their venture the Benaissa Legacy Fund, signaling that their profits would be reinvested into cultural preservation and community apprenticeship. Their ultimate goal was to use the restored collection as the seed capital. Samira dedicated herself to finishing the remaining 10 high-value pieces, including the elaborate wedding curtain and the silk scarves, working with a renewed sense of fulfillment that transcended the need for money. Omar, meanwhile, designed the studio's operational model. He planned a small, highly selective apprenticeship program, aiming to train 3 young women from the Medina in Samira's high-integrity restoration methods, providing them with valuable, high-skill employment. They realized that their happiness was tied to sharing their success and contributing to the Medina community that had, in its own way, shielded them from Yasin. The act of planning, of building something meaningful together, deepened their true love, turning their shared hardship into a shared creative purpose. Just as they were settling into their new routine, a complication arose. The renowned French collector who had commissioned Samira for the restoration work suddenly increased the pressure, demanding the tapestries be completed 2 months ahead of schedule. When Omar politely explained the impossibility of rushing delicate restoration work, the collector responded not with negotiation, but with a thinly veiled threat to withdraw the entire commission and publicly discredit Samira's work. It became clear that this collector, now aware of the collection's massive worth through the press, was attempting to financially pressure them. The collector wanted Samira to fail to meet the deadline, creating an excuse to offer a quick, low-ball purchase for the newly restored Benaissa textiles. The situation was maddening. The threat wasn't financial ruin anymore, but a direct assault on Samira's professional integrity and the very value they had fought so hard to create. Omar, no longer burdened by debt, felt a burst of defiant courage. They had beaten the local bully. Now, they had to stand up to the international one. Omar decided to meet the collector's aggression with a sophisticated countermove. He drafted a formal, meticulously detailed letter, translated into flawless French, that went far beyond a simple refusal. The letter cited Samira's certification and the ethics standards of Madame Zohra's museum network, explaining that any attempt to force the completion of restoration work ahead of established preservation timelines would be viewed as a violation of her professional standards. He then strategically enclosed the published article from Mme Hanain, which praised Samira's integrity, and added a discreet note that the Tamazight Carpet, now their most famous piece, was currently being documented at the museum. The message was clear. Samira was not a freelance student. She was a rising, ethically protected expert, Rushing her work would compromise the quality of his pieces, and publicly attacking her would invite a devastating counter-response from the Moroccan cultural community. The collector immediately backed down, sending a conciliatory message and agreeing to the original timeline. Omar had learned that courage, coupled with logistics, was the true pathway to both money and fulfillment. 6 months after the council's injunction, the 10 showcase pieces were complete. They were magnificent, vibrant, historically intact, and authenticated. It was time for the sale. Omar and Samira bypassed the traditional auction houses and speculators, choosing instead to hold a private, highly exclusive viewing at Madame Zora's museum. The event was a testament to their ethical approach, attended only by museum curators and collectors who prioritized historical preservation. The sale was a stunning success. The 10 pieces, sold individually, fetched prices that shattered their highest estimates, confirming Samira's valuation and her restoration's impact. The profits were immense, far exceeding the initial debt. The wedding curtain alone sold for a record price. Omar's mother, invited to the viewing, watched tearfully as her son and Samira presented their work, finally seeing that her son's path was one of true happiness and honor. The money wasn't an escape route anymore. It was the capital that would launch their collective fulfillment and secure their future together. The final chapter of their initial saga culminated in the official launch of the Benaissa Legacy Fund. The fund was legally established to not only house the remaining textiles, which would serve as educational tours and museum loans, but more importantly, to finance the new Benaissa el-Fassi cooperative restoration studio. The studio was to be located in the now renovated Hanout, honoring the memory of Omar's grandfather, whose secret life as a community protector had made it all possible. Their first act was to hire Omar's mother as the studio administrator, giving her a respected, meaningful role. Samira would lead the training, and Omar would manage the business development, ensuring the studio's financial health and ethical standards. As they stood in the newly painted, sunlight space, surrounded by their first group of bright-eyed apprentices, Omar turned to Samira. "We are debt-free. We honored my grandfather, and we fought for the Benali's water," he said, taking her hand. "We found our true love in a marketplace, and built our happiness out of old cloth." Their eyes met, a shared promise for a future where profit and purpose walked hand in hand. The grand opening of the Benaissa el-Fassi Cooperative Restoration Studio was a blend of traditional Moroccan celebration and modern business launch. The renovated Hanout glowed with fresh plaster, polished cedarwood, and the soft, filtered light necessary for delicate textile work. Local Medina merchants, Madame Zora, Mater Fikri, and, most importantly, the Benali family were all guests of honor. Omar, standing proudly with Samira, spoke first, his words echoing the values they had fought for. He introduced his mother as the new administrator, and the 3 young women, Amina, Fataya, and Lena, as the studio's first apprentices. He stressed that the studio's mission was not just profit, but preservation and empowerment. Samira then addressed the crowd, speaking passionately about the integrity of Moroccan craftsmanship. The highlight was the unveiling of a plaque dedicated to Omar's grandfather, recognizing him as a protector of community and culture. The atmosphere was one of profound happiness and communal fulfillment. The Benali family presented Omar and Samira with a small, newly woven tapestry, a gift of gratitude that featured the almond symbol prominently, cementing the bond between the legacy and the water rights they had preserved. The reality of running the cooperative studio immediately set in. Samira, now the master restorer, began the rigorous training regimen for the 3 apprentices. She emphasized precision, patience, and the historical context of every stitch and dye. She delegated simple tasks, like thread preparation and documentation, testing their discipline and attention to detail. Omar handled the operations, securing new commissions using the funds from the initial textile sale as a financial buffer. He instituted a profit-sharing model for the apprentices once they achieved certification, linking their individual money to the studio's collective success. This model was a direct repudiation of the cutthroat corporate mindset of his Uncle Yasin. Amina, Fataya, and Lena, initially intimidated by the delicate nature of the work, quickly bonded over the shared experience. Omar and Samira watched them, their own true love strengthened by seeing their dream of creating meaningful, ethical employment become a reality. The studio's first major commission involved restoring a set of priceless silk and a set of gold thread wedding banners for a major Rabat cultural foundation. The foundation had a tight deadline, but the textile was far more deteriorated than expected. Samira realized that using their existing solvent supplies would take too long, jeopardizing the commission and the studio's reputation. Omar stepped in, not with pressure, but with a logistical solution. He used his knowledge of regional trade routes and his remaining contacts from school to quickly source a highly specialized, fast-acting enzyme solvent from a laboratory in Casablanca, a difficult and expensive procurement. He successfully negotiated a bulk discount that secured them enough solvent for the entire commission and future projects. His ability to remove the logistical roadblocks allowed Samira and the apprentices to focus purely on the restoration quality, meeting the deadline without compromising their professional integrity. The commission was successfully completed, earning the studio a glowing recommendation and a substantial payment, further solidifying their ethical yet profitable model. Life in the Medina is too compact for permanent avoidance. One quiet afternoon, Uncle Yasin walked into the Benaissa el-Fassi studio. He didn't come to argue or threaten. He came as a subdued, broken man. The council's ruling and the subsequent press coverage had decimated his firm's local reputation, and his partners were freezing him out. He stood silently, observing the vibrant, purposeful activity, the apprentices working with quiet intensity, Omar efficiently managing a supply order, and Samira overseeing a delicate dye test. The atmosphere of ethical fulfillment was the antithesis of his own career's ruthless trajectory. Finally, he spoke, his voice hollow. "I came to tell you, you won. You found a loophole I missed. Not in the law, but in the heart of this city." He admitted his jealousy not of Omar's money, but of his courage and his clear sense of purpose. Omar, having achieved all the justice he needed, felt pity, not triumph. He quietly handed Yasin a professionally printed pamphlet detailing the studio's apprenticeship program, suggesting that a similar focus on ethical training might be Yasin's only path to restoring his own name. The final and most crucial piece of the legacy fell into place 3 months after the studio's launch. Maida Fikri, using Omar's detailed evidence, successfully won the permanent, legal protection of the Benali family's water rights. The council ruled that the ancestral irrigation channel was a protected community resource, forever severing it from the commercial land ownership. The Benali family was secure, their happiness restored by the fulfillment of a promise made decades ago. Omar and Samira received the news together. It was the moment they both agreed was the true, complete victory, far more meaningful than the repayment of the debt or the commission money. It was the successful defense of his grandfather's deepest value, that community integrity outshines individual profit. Later that evening, under the stars on the stall's rooftop, Omar gave Samira a small, antique silver ring etched with the almond symbol, a symbol of their shared promise to each other and to their community. "This is not just for our true love, Samira," he whispered. "It's a promise that our life together will always be about almond water, life, and integrity." The studio's early success, fueled by Samira's talent and Omar's business acumen, attracted attention, and not all of it was positive. The 3 apprentices Amina, Fataya, and Lena were now skilled enough to handle small commissions independently, generating their own money. This newfound independence was a double-edged sword. Fataya, in particular, began to grow impatient with the studio's slow, meticulous pace and the cooperative model's shared profits. She was approached by Malik, the aggressive antique dealer, who offered her significantly more cash to work for him part-time, using her newly acquired restoration skills to quickly clean up textiles for the black market. Malik promised quick money and total freedom from Omar and Samira's, demanding ethical standards. This presented a crisis for the studio's philosophy. Would the law of easy profit fracture their mission of integrity? Samira and Omar had to address the conflict head-on, realizing that building a legacy was also about nurturing the values of the next generation. Fataya confessed the offer to Samira, torn between the instant gratification of Malik's money and the long-term promise of the studio's fulfillment. Samira didn't scold her. Instead, she used the moment as a profound teaching opportunity. She took Fataya back to the Benaissa collection, specifically the Handira and the Tamazight Carpet. "Malik wants you to erase the history of these pieces with quick fixes," Samira explained gently. "He wants you to compromise your hands for a few extra dirhams. We didn't save these textiles just to pay a debt, Fataya. We saved them to preserve our story. The money he offers is temporary. The integrity you build now, the quality of your signature, is permanent. That is your true long-term capital." Omar presented the financial facts, The studio offered sustainable growth, health benefits, and profit sharing, whereas Malik offered a transactional, dead-end job. For Tyre, seeing the difference between fleeting, selfish gain and enduring, shared happiness, refused Malik's offer. The studio's philosophy had survived its first moral test. With the studio running smoothly, Omar felt compelled to return to his high school studies. He was now a pragmatic businessman with a deep appreciation for the Medina's traditional integrity, a worldview far richer than when he left. He didn't just study logistics. He used the studio as a real-world case study for his final project, writing a comprehensive analysis on the viability of ethical, culturally focused cooperatives in modern Moroccan markets. His experience, the struggle with debt, the legal battle with Yasin, and the success of the studio made him an exceptional student. He graduated at the top of his vocational class. His thesis, compelling argument, that fulfillment and money are not mutually exclusive when anchored by strong ethical practice. His final achievement wasn't just a high school diploma. It was the public validation of the Benaissa el-Fassi model, which positioned him as a respected thought leader in cultural entrepreneurship. This success solidified the complementary nature of his and Samira's skills. Her hands preserved the past, and his mind secured the future. A few weeks after Omar's graduation, Uncle Yasin returned to the studio. He didn't ask for work. He came with a small, discreetly wrapped parcel containing a set of his old, high-quality drafting tools, a silent acknowledgement of Omar's success and his own loss. He confessed that he had taken Omar's advice and begun volunteering his planning expertise at a law center in a city far away from Marrakech, seeking a slow, quiet path to personal redemption. Yasin then gave Omar a piece of crucial, inside information. He revealed that his former firm, despite the council's ruling, was still trying to subtly undermine the Benaissa family by pressuring local officials to restrict the maintenance of the ancestral irrigation channel, effectively trying to let the water rights die a slow, bureaucratic death. This information was Yasin's final, honest attempt to correct his past actions. Omar and Samira knew they had to be vigilant. The battle for community integrity was an ongoing responsibility, not a one-time victory. Armed with Yasin's tip, Omar immediately contacted Mater Fikri. They quickly formed a community task force, led by Omar and Khalid Benali, to preemptively lobby the local water commission. Omar, using his logistical skills, organized a community-funded project for the proper repair and maintenance of the irrigation channel. The project wasn't just physical labor, it was a powerful public statement. Omar organized the Medina merchants, the Benaissa villagers, and the studio apprentices to work side by side, They wanted to outsource their own North African textile preservation work to the studio, guaranteeing a steady flow of high-value, high-integrity commissions. Omar leveraged the full story, the Tamazight Carpet, the debt battle, and the commitment to the Arman principle as the studio's ethical branding. Their reputation for integrity meant they could command premium prices, ensuring the financial security and the profit-sharing model for the growing team of apprentices. The studio became a symbol of how traditional craftsmanship and ethical sourcing could succeed brilliantly in the modern global economy, achieving sustained money while maintaining absolute fulfillment of their core values. Years passed. The Benaissa el-Fassi studio was now a respected cultural institution, employing dozens of certified young women from the Medina. The inherited debt was a distant memory, replaced by a substantial endowment for the Benaissa Legacy Fund. Omar and Samira had built a life together, anchored by their mutual respect and shared mission. One quiet evening, Omar found a small, new ledger hidden in his grandfather's old writing desk, a newer one, dated from the final years of his life. Inside, it wasn't a record of sales, but a journal of happiness. His grandfather had documented the things that brought him joy: the Benali family's annual harvest, the laughter of a child in the hangout, and, most touchingly, his pride in Omar's early aptitude for complex math and Samira's passion for history. The final entry read, "My legacy is not money, but the kindness I planted. May Omar and the little restorer find their garden." Omar realized his grandfather had silently watched and guided him all along, celebrating the ethical path they had ultimately chosen. Omar and Samira stood on the rooftop of their hangout, now the centerpiece of their thriving studio, watching the sunset over the rooftops of Marrakech. Below them, they could hear the soft, focused hum of the evening restoration shift, the sound of history being preserved and livelihoods being built. The studio's work was more than a business. It was a living embodiment of the 5 themes they had navigated. They had found true love in a shared, desperate fight. They achieved money by choosing integrity over shortcuts. They honored family by transforming a debt-ridden inheritance into a powerful legacy. They discovered fulfillment in dedicating their skills to a higher cultural purpose. And in doing so, they found enduring happiness, not as a fleeting emotion, but as the quiet, profound satisfaction of a life well lived and justly built. Their story, the Moroccan marketplace mystery, was now a permanent, vibrant thread in the enduring tapestry of the Medina.